sound like a good way to start?
I just hit start streaming, so we're starting now. All right. Let's see.
Boom. All right. I think we are streaming. Hey, welcome everybody. We've got people in the chat. What's really funny is that I see the chat delayed a little bit. I see myself delayed, so it'll be a little bit funny on time.
Yeah, that's going to be on both of our end. We've got about a 10-second delay or something like that. So bear in mind with that also. My nice beverage. I figured it's a live stream, so we should probably do it right?
I am still not drunk podcasting. I haven't found the right beverage yet. So, but we'll do another one, and then I'll get just shit.
All right. So,
all right.
Why don't you give us the start of our normal podcast? Do you remember it, or you got to go to the notes?
No, I always got to go to the notes. Are you kidding me? Never trust my memory. All right. So, with that, there we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Larpcast, a podcast about live action role playing and all that goes with it. My name is Mickey Golosofker.
I'm Bill Tobin, and today we're going to be talking about the future of LARP and doing our live stream AMA. So, pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, and
I'm going to turn my gain up. I'm getting people saying I'm pretty quiet. I got a new mic today, so it's going to sound a little different.
We want to thank the people that are we've got people in it watching us live, and they're in a chat room, and we can kind of take their questions if they've got any, hopefully, because I do love the sound of my own voice, but I do like answering questions. So, so thanks, guys. Really appreciate having you here. And then, of course, we want to thank our patrons, patreon.com/Larpcast, which not only makes this possible, but for which this is a reward level. We are finally getting done. So thank you for your patience, your support, and your understanding as we try a live episode and see what happens. All right. So with all that said, we're going to talk about, while we answer questions, and I should say, guys, if you have a question, it doesn't have to be about whatever we're actually talking about. If you just want some other random LARP question, it's fine. But we thought talking about the future of LARPing, where it might be heading in a bunch of different ways, would be really, really kind of an interesting and fun thing. And it's not really advice like we normally do because it's the future. So then we can, be really wrong about things, and that's okay. So I think to start off, and I can't paste because I'm on camera, and that's really messing with me.
Are you still going to be able to rant?
I'll try. So when we talk about the future of LARPing, I think the first thing that comes to mind, which is sort of the buzzword for everything, is technology, right? You can't really walk 3 feet in the modern world without somebody telling you about how technology is going to revolutionize whatever industry that's in front of you. And I think that holds true. And sure, some of it might be things like materials technology. Somebody will invent the better foam or something, but really, I think we're going to see a lot of more interesting things in special effects. EL wire kinds of things and lighting and stuff like that, and then of course data and computer integration, which is really what Fort Ivy is doing as much as he possibly can. And nobody likes you, Patrick, for saying paradigm shift, you bastard. But no, you're actually correct. Technology does cause a paradigm shift, and now you made me say the sentence. But yeah, Fort Ivy has his system, right, where his large system of your smartphone tracks your hits for you, pretty much, with sensors and weapons and whatever else. And I feel like that's actually, we are really behind for a demographic of, huge numbers of nerds and computer geeks. We are really actually behind. Cyrus mentioned. Is that what he calls it? His legacy system, something like that?
Yeah, that's the game.
Yep. For a bunch of people who should be really up in the tech integration thing, LARPing is woefully and ridiculously actually behind. We're not even. It's not that we're going to be taking advantage of the advancements of tomorrow. It's that we haven't even taken advantage of the advancements of last decade. You know, just in smartphone app. Though a few places are, and David Penn has pointed out, Occam's Razor, which is the place I actually think of as doing this kind of thing from stories Allison tells me. Yeah, exactly. Is like QR code. They have a QR code crafting system. They've got apps that you do for lockpicking puzzles, things like that. Um, and I'm trying to remember. Either they or another LARP, would do other custom apps or like a laptop that would allow you to, if you want to disarm a bomb or something like that. So like one LARP is doing it, and 5,000 of them are lagging behind.
I've got a hot take here, and it might not be the best take that people like, but what Occam's Razor does, I think, is real great. I love the idea of interacting with the environment. Almost what was it? It was like Wizard Quest or something like that they Magic Quest. That's the one with the wands that you would interact with the world and you could buy wands. And I think this was like a theme park they had by Disney and a couple other places. I think that the future of technology is there should be an overarching game that kind of like monitors it and has things out there that you interact with. I don't think an app to track hits is going to be a thing that we need at all. I mean.
I'm not saying that should be the way to go. At least somebody's trying to use some technology, in some way that's useful. I don't want an app to track hits because depending on genre, right? Like if I'm playing my medieval LARP, I don't want to be pulling out a screen of any kind because it just looks ridiculous. And so I'm kind of with you there. But yeah, there's a lot of seamless tech integration that we're just not doing, and I think that a lot of LARPing in the future is going to be doing that. And then, of course, my great love, which is logistics, which is endlessly helped by technology.
I think I just need to get closer to my mic.
So, for example, if you go to Fifth Gate, right? Fifth Gate has a props donation list that they have. They say, okay, please, we want these following things, and a bunch of them are available on Amazon. You can just order them from Amazon, right? And so this is a common and easy thing, but just an example of technology making logistics easier is I ordered stuff for Fifth Gate. I clicked in their website. I selected the things that I wanted right there. It threw it into an Amazon shopping cart for me, and then I went to and then opened up Amazon for me, and then I ordered it, had it delivered. It's being delivered on Thursday to their GM, and it made that part super easy. That's a thing that didn't exist, 15 years ago, and that's a very small piece. I think that there's a lot of inefficiencies that can just be techno geeked out.
So we got an interesting comment from Dave. He mentioned that technology is a bad habit of failing at campsites. That's. I used to work in RF. We did RF booster systems, and I'm really surprised that they haven't gotten better coverage on these camps. And honestly, at this point in time, a lot of the stuff that you need to increase coverage, if you need to get a phone to work 4G at a site, you can probably install on your own. These are commercially available things. Now, you will want to make sure that you get the instructions on how to do it, and it's set up correctly, because if you set it up incorrectly, not only will you not have coverage, but you'll eliminate coverage from pretty much everyone within, 5 miles. But I am surprised that this has not come up more with camps.
Yeah, it's always, like I have T-Mobile, so I never have signal at a campsite. But, there's sort of, I have seen some bizarre and epic, like, just printer failures at campsites, so, and things like that, and so, yeah, you've got to have backups to things, but we also, there's a certain degree of, one of the nice things about the advancement of technology is things become a little bit more rugged and become a little bit more, a little less dependent on 17 gnomes carefully holding the pieces in place. So, oh wow, yeah, another great comment from Dave about printer ink freezing in game trailers left over the winter. I hadn't thought of that one. But like nowadays, I'll print out my write ups if I'm running stuff because I sometimes just like to have them and write on them as an idiosyncrasy. But actually, my primary function, my primary use for on files, it's on my tablet. I show up at an event. I've downloaded everything on my tablet, even if I don't have signal or Wi-Fi or whatever. All the documents are there. Simple. And my tablet, I guess, could break, but then I've got my phone. You can kind of create technological redundancy. You know, have two printers. If that, definitely, I remember in um, late '90s, pretty much the same event where they gave us the install instructions for a Windows mouse for Windows 95 as a code to break in Nero, making me the only IT expert in Tira. Um, that was also the events where, yeah, like all the printer cables would never connect and just everything would fail for no apparent reason. And yeah, good point, Dave. Once again, Dave, really, we should just have had you on this. Is that we're also seeing an increase in logistical, like cross game logistics, just integrations and progress in Larp Portal. He mentions as being a pretty good logistical step forward, where it's now a database and a customer and character and game management kind of website where different games, they can all sign up to be a part of Larp Portal. I guess there was a beta, and maybe there may or may not be a cost to it. But as more and more games are in Larp Portal, somebody like me, if I play 5 games, I have one website to pre-reg and spend CP and do my Pell and buy things like that. And all I have to do is just like change them. Which character are you talking about? No, not my. I want to talk about my 5th game one, so it's in my drop down. So I think things like that, those are really great steps, and I'm really looking forward to where that ends up, because we're in the infancy of that, I think. But as every single step that makes logistics easier, it makes for a better game. And then you get to the actual game, and now you're using tech in all sorts of other ways. EL Wire was sort of this crazy big thing that a ton of people like fell in love with, and people probably still use a fair amount. And that was making cool glowy swords or cool glowy shields or cool glowy whatever. Because now we have cheap and durable. Forgive a definition of durable, but cheap and relatively durable lighting effects. Instead of just throwing Silum on people. There was 7 Virtues, I think, which had they had the proximity switches. I don't exactly know how it works, but 2 objects, they each emit a signal, and when they get close to each other and detect each other, it triggers one of them activates, and so they had a sword that would light up when certain kinds of enemies were nearby. Right? They had the Lord of the Rings effect. Because they just made sure that when the NPC of the appropriate monstrous type went out, they had one of these little these little transmitters on them. They get next to the PC and the sword would light up. And what we're seeing is that happens. It just doesn't happen a lot, and I think that's going to be a big deal. So,
can I talk about something that I'm really excited to see in the future with LARP?
No.
All right, this is what are you going to rant about this time?
Go for it.
So you've told the story a number of times, the same story a number of times, so you know it's good. About an event where something was happening in an event in the Northeast that simultaneously affected something that happened in an event in the South. I think that's what happened. Yes. I'm really looking forward to more events that can somehow more automate that interaction. I think it would be really cool. And this can start pretty low in technology. Imagine if you had a phone, and the phone was hidden behind some puzzle or some door that you had to get to in this certain event, and then in that phone there's a contact and that contact is someone at another event. That phone is like somewhere in like not the tavern, but like the common area, and it gets this call, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, who am I talking to? I don't know who I'm talking to." And maybe there's some information that they need at one event that's on the wall at the other event. They have to transmit this code to them. I think that would be, or maybe they have the code at the one event and they call and they give it to them, and then the other event has a cipher and they have to give that code back to them. I think that'd be really cool. It seems like it would be a nightmare logistically, but
yeah, I mean, let's go one step further. Not a big step, but a step, which is, yeah, imagine two simultaneous events. And so here's a field fight that happens, like it's not a common field fight mechanic, but it's not an uncommon one, which is the town goes and fights, and a small group peels off, and they have to accomplish a task. And so they can accomplish the task, the rest of the town can't get the bad guy, right? So there's sort of a timing pacing mechanism of two different groups. And imagine taking that concept and just stretching it to multiple games so you've got, 2 games or 2 chapters of the same game, let's say. And in the north, they're getting to the temple that they have to solve the puzzle and push the button, right? And that is the only thing that will weaken the bad guy who's actually being fought in the south, right, during a field fight. So you've got these sort of 2 big field, maybe they're 2 big field fights or field encounters, something like that, town encounters. And so in the north, they in the south they're fighting and guarding 5 points and doing whatever dance, but they can't kill the bad guy. And in the north, they're delving down deeper and deeper and deeper and solving some stuff and going up or whatever. And they get to this thing, and they put their hand on the sacred stone, and what that does is activates a touch screen, which pushes, essentially just pushing a button that sends a signal to a light. It sends a phone-to-phone signal. That phone down in the south controls a light that turns on, and so in the south they just see the obelisk lights up, and that's how they know they can kill the bad guy. You can just, I'm actually not a super tech guy, but something like that seems possible now, and I think we'll start to see more and more of.
Now, Dave mentioned something this is something that seems like it would be right down the alley of Dystopia Rising, which I would probably agree with. Actually, I would be surprised I would not be surprised if they've already done something like this. If they had 2 events at the same time. I don't know how they schedule their events, if they make sure that there aren't multiple events at the same time so that they get people traveling. I'm not sure. But I don't think it's even necessarily tied to like a shared world game system. As long as it's 2 games where the technology that you're interacting with exists and there's not like a weird major vocabulary difference between the people who are communicating, you could have, kind of like a post-apocalyptic type game interacting with like a spy type game if they both have phones.
Well, if they're interacting, I mean, that's sort of based on a shared. I guess this is sort of a meta question of what is and is not a shared game, but for me, if the 2 games can affect each other, they're now in the same cosmos to some degree.
Well, the issue is how much do those people exist in the other game? I mean, are they just like, are the PCs in one game acting as an NPC in the other game, and vice versa? Then, I mean, they don't really need to be in the same world.
No, but I'm just saying if they're effective. Now, on the other hand, you could. So there's this idea of one-time pad ciphers, which I'm about to butcher the explanation of. So my apologies to people who actually know any cryptography. But it's this idea that you can create a code that's essentially unbreakable. You can only use it once, and then what it requires is a random number as you can get, right? And so they take a random sampling of background, cosmic radiation on a given moment or something. They use that, creates a number, and they use that number, and that's integral to their pad cipher, right? And the reason I think of this in my own weird way is you could also just, if you felt like it, if you just want to be random about things, you could use one game as the timer for another game, and they don't have to interact at all. Just like, this field fight will go until that other field fight ends, just for the hell of it, if you want. And then if that works, then that might build a bridge between 2 games, and then they would decide to be in the same cosmology. But for me, in my way of thinking, if people in one game are affecting people in another game in anything other than what I just described, they're in the same cosmology, even if they're not in the same world. And as long as they're okay with that, cool. And maybe that's a cool way to foster cooperation.
I think this would be an excellent one shot, though. I'm not
Oh,
nominating myself to run it, but I think it would be cool to run two separate events and have them heavily relying upon this mechanic. I mean, I've definitely run modules where it's a similar thing where you can't, the one group can't progress until the other group has completed their puzzle or so on and so forth. We actually almost totally wiped in Exiles at one point in time when they had one of those mods, because the other group had to solve a puzzle and we were all dying of poison gas, so
that's
did not
about
go
right.
great.
All right. So obviously, technology is a big thing, and we're sort of scratching the surface a little bit. But I also want to talk about another aspect of the future, as it were, and that's acceptance. So LARP, in the couple of decades that I've been doing this, the LARP acceptance has actually gone up because I think that you go through these stages with weird, bizarre, niche, nerdy hobbies, and we were in the stage of nobody even knows what we are, and when they find out, they look down on us. And now we're in the stage of people have heard of it and look down on us, and that's a necessary and important stage, right? Like you see LARPing. There's an American Dad episode that's about LARPing. It's not terribly flattering, but it's about it, right? There are movies where LARPing comes up. You occasionally see an episode of some documentary news show or something where they'll do something about LARPing. Right?
There's almost always like a CSI show that every one of those crime procedurals has one episode where someone is in an MMO and it's just horribly portrayed. There's always one episode where someone's either at a LARP event or a Ren fair and it's just awfully
Exactly.
portrayed.
And it's terrible. But what it's doing though is LARP can't have acceptance until people know what it is. And so we're at the leaching into the public consciousness as a thing stage. And then I think what's going to happen is, we're going to be we're going to be at the, it's kind of simultaneous to the broadly made fun of stage. And that stage will continue for a while. But that level of progress to me is actually really hopeful because now that people have heard of it and know what it is, then they can potentially be educated about it. But I can't educate you about LARPing unless you know what it is, right? And so I think we'll pass through that, and then it'll be the thing we kind of make fun of nerds for doing, and then it'll eventually be like, oh yeah, I did a little LARPing when I was a kid, and eventually, LARPers are going to be, you know, hiring people and owning things and like in charge of things, and just outside the gaming sphere, just in general, and it'll be a thing, right? And we're lagging behind D&D by 15, 20 years or whatever. So in 15, 20 years, it will probably be where we are now, where D&D is a thing that, yeah, it still gets made fun of here and there, but at the same time, Vin Diesel plays it. So people are kind of like, yeah, they don't really give a shit as much as they used to. And it's not this titanically horrible thing. Any random 45-year-old lawyer may or may not have played D&D at some point in his life and is not terribly ashamed about it. So I feel like we're going to go up that ladder, and it'll be just a more commonly known, accepted, vaguely made fun of, but not a big deal level. Whereas now we're sort of, half the people have heard of us, and of those, 9 out of 10 think it's, the dorkiest thing in the world and make fun of you for it. But we're making progress. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to someone running a proper fest LARP in the U.S.
Conquest America.
Yeah, that's not that would never be it. I think it's going to take a little bit of work. I think there's still a huge. So I think a lot of the LARPing population. Well, here's the big thing. I think we need to find a way to make amends with the SCA, and I think they don't want to be a LARP. A lot of us, a lot of LARPers are like, they're kind of crazy, and I don't think we want to be associated with them. But the truth of the matter is that these really large fest games are pretty light rules, even lighter rules than something like. I mean, Accelerant is simple, but it's not really light rules. It's got to be lighter than that. And we really have to find a way to get the be cool rule, because one of the first things that comes up, we get a lot of people who are come to our games or come to Nero games and are saying saying, I don't want to be a combatant. So is that cool? And I have to unfortunately tell them, yeah, you don't have to be a combatant, but like people might fight you, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm getting some feedback.
Bill,
Yes, I can hear you, but you're very quiet.
you're cutting in and out.
I'm cutting in and out. Okay.
There we go. That came through strong.
Let me take a moment here. Dave said, "Why or why not is the SCA a LARP?" In my opinion, the SCA is a LARP because you go by a different name.
Oh God.
If you have a persona, it's a LARP. But I mean, there's a lot of things that they do that obviously we don't do. There's not a lot of levels. Everything's kind of what you're actually doing. It's a realistic, not really realistic LARP. It's a LARP. I've got friends who are in the SCA. They say it's a LARP. I mean, theatrical stuff is also maybe your LARPing. I mean, it's. What's that?
I said for anybody in the SCA who's listening, please send all hate to Ohio.
I have to say, I think I don't care. As horrible as that is for a conversation, right? We're trying to have a chat. My thing is that whether the SCA is a LARP or not, I don't know that it matters all that much. Some people in the SCA say it is. Some people in the SCA say it doesn't. Do I think it is? I've never been, so I don't actually know. From the descriptions I've heard, it doesn't hit the marks of a LARP for me because I haven't really. I don't get the impression that that from the stories I've heard of the people who've been, which again I've never been. Yeah, you go by a different name, but that's sort of that's basically they're talking to you. They're just calling you by a nickname. Like I wasn't born Mickey. It's a nickname. Right? I'm Michael. And they have these persona names, but and maybe they fashion a history for them and have some fun with it. But for the most part, nobody's standing around really super immersed in.
See, that's the thing though. That's
the description I've been given.
It's what you make of it. It depends on who you're talking to, because there are a lot of people who get like real into it. One example is one of my friends. A couple of my friends do the SCA, and one of the guys who works at a local gaming store is also in the SCA, and they're very cordial with him. His character will not talk to my buddy Ben, like at all in game. He's very serious. They're always in character, 24/7 during Pensic Wars, which is a 2-week event, and they're like, I think they're Vikings. So they do some real crazy stuff, and like so that's the thing is. That's the kind of thing that we would need for a fest type LARP. You would need a LARP where people can kind of, gauge their level of how in they are. And if you consider the SCA LARP, we already have these fest style LARPs. You got things like Pensic Wars. Pensic Wars gets 5,000 people over 2 weeks in Western PA. So like, sometimes I think the numbers are higher than that. But like, that's a fest LARP. It's a real, and people love it, and they go back year after year after year, and it's. I mean, there's no rules except for fighting, which are heavily regulated because you're wailing on people. But that's what we need for a fest like LARP. You can't have like a quest LARP. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Getting points out, probably like closer to 15,000. And no, I think that there's an infrastructure and a lesson to be learned from the SCA in terms of doing large scale. But whether it's a LARP or not, I think. What I'm hearing from you, or what I hear from other people, is some people it's a LARP. Some people are LARPing at the SCA, and some people aren't. Right? But ultimately, for our purposes, I don't know that it matters as much as it matters that we can learn from them. Hey, how do you motivate 12,000 people to show up, or 15? Matt says that it's 12,000 on average. Maybe it goes up to 15,000, 20,000, whatever. How do you motivate 5-digit numbers of people to show up in a field in the middle of Pennsylvania and stay there for 2 weeks and be miserable? Like, because if the SAA isn't a LARP, and I'm not saying they are, they're pretty close. Like they're LARP adjacent at least. Like it wouldn't take. It's not a huge paradigm shift if it became for somebody to envision it as one. And I think that there's a lot of really good lessons that can be learned of like, how did let's study the history of Pennsic. How did it come to be? Can it be replicated? Can it be other lessons that can be learned? How was it grown organically? What came about and that kind of thing? And I think that's a really useful place to learn a lot of lessons.
Well, I think
so actually your original point about we got to maybe heal a rift that may be there between the SAA and LARP. I agree because we can learn from each other.
I don't think that we necessarily need to heal the rift. I think I'm actually going to side with the SCA on this one. I think we tend to be like, oh, those guys don't know how to role play. They don't know how to run a LARP. Here's an 80-page rule book on how to play the game. I think the real answer for why they get so much attendance is that SCA is really a thing that everybody can attend. You don't have to fight if you don't want to fight. And so a lot of non-combatants show up and they do, a variety of things from realistic crafting, unrealistic crafting, playing board games. Most people drink. There's a lot of drinking. That's a big part. I don't think you're going to get 5,000 people in one area without drinking. I don't think it's going to happen. You're going to have a game that's going to allow that kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right. So, Dave tells us we have a pretty active and interesting debate going on in our chat. Not debate, or just observations. But it is probably its own good guest topic. Like we should get an SCA.
Yeah.
We've got apparently we know a bunch of SCA people, right? And so we should get one of them or two of them on the show and do it up. And I think that would be a great guest topic and just dive into it a little bit more. But as always, just remember that on any SCA related topic, all hate mail goes to Ohio because you started this. Because it's the SAA is it or isn't it a LARP it's that argument that gets really, really like people really mad really, really quickly. Like it's this crazy hot button thing that I've discovered because I've seen the argument online at times and people just get really pissed off.
I mean, the SCA isn't a LARP, just like Boffer LARPs aren't the same thing as Mind's Eye Theater. Like, people get real defensive and insist that the other one, that their dress is ugly and my dress is pretty. Like, that's what they get into. And the truth of the matter is, we're all not normal. Let's just leave it at that. That's fine. I mean,
that's our broad category.
Yeah.
Not normal. So how about this? We apparently have a whole bunch of SCA people listening. Particularly the guys in the chat. If any of you are actually interested in coming on the show and talking about this at a sort of a more in-depth, shoot us a message because I think that would be very cool. But I want to talk about a few other things in terms of the future. Going right into my wheelhouse, I want to talk about lawsuits. Lawsuits.
You don't do that anymore, Mickey. You don't have to go to Albany anymore.
It's true. Oh God, so glorious. Albany's terrible. I would apologize to anybody listening to this who lives in Albany, but it's more that I apologize to you and your lot in life. I feel bad for you. I hate Albany.
So I'm gonna part the kimono a little bit right here. So I think we may have alluded to it in another episode. And a number of our guests have possibly seen it, and one of our guests has definitely caused it a number of times. But so in our show notes, and I apologize if any of these actually made it into the page. Well, I don't apologize. You can enjoy those notes. But occasionally the last line of the podcast that we have written down, which is thank you all and have a great evening, I think.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening and have a great day.
Yeah, and so Dan Comstock would change the words of that to match the blunder that happens in Anchorman. So, and then he did that originally in episode 4, and it stuck around in our show notes for, 20 weeks, something like that. And then it quickly became a joke about Albany because Mickey had to go get his license in Albany.
Yeah, I was getting my it's fine. I passed the New York bar exam, and I took the New York and Mass simultaneously, and I got my Mass license, and then I just waited a few years, and then finally had to go to New York and get my license before my exam results expired. So I had the misfortune of having to go to Albany several times, and I hate Albany. Anyway, so lawsuits. This is so what I mentioned lawsuits as part of the future of Larping because I think it's part of it's the culmination of several things. So as we get acceptance, right, as more people LARP, so these all things kind of happen. It's a little bit of a cycle. The more people LARP, the more accepted it is. The more accepted it is, the more people LARP. Uh, then you eventually hit a point where the more money there is, and and once there's more money, there's going to be more lawsuits. Now, there's already going to be more lawsuits just because some people in the LARP community love lawsuits. We have some, Joe sues people. We've had some interesting, some interesting legal work come out of there. But it's not going to be the only thing. You know, the what money is going to flow into LARPing. That's I guess this and lawsuits come together. Money and lawsuit, money is going to flow into LARPing. More people are going to be doing it. More people with higher incomes are going to be doing it. You're gonna have some we're already seeing it. We're already seeing that there are LARPs, College of Wizardry style, New World Magus. I can't pronounce it, and I will screw it up. The College of Wizardry and the other College of Wizardry, the American version. The
New World Magischool.
Thank you. They're already not catering to everybody, right? They already have because they have a high cost, and it's legit, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they're already doing market segmentation and saying, listen, you can't afford below this. This isn't the LARP for you. You're going to see more of that, and you're going to see more. It's going to just be this crazy, thing, right? And then what's going to happen, I think, is that you're going to start getting lawsuits that aren't just Joe being Joe. You're going to get lawsuits, from other people, and it's just going to be a thing that happens because it's a thing that happens with any sort of industry that emerges and then becomes sort of more and more popular. I think we're always going to have Joe lawsuits, and they're a separate category, but you're going to have a lot more legitimate ones that kind of we're going to go through those cycles. I think we're going to get somebody's going to have a blockbuster LARP. Dystopia Rising makes, as far as I know, I haven't played it, and I don't, so apologies if I get something wrong. But as far as I know, Dystopia Rising is a monetarily successful LARP system, right? And so you can imagine. I'm not saying this specifically, but you can imagine a situation where somebody takes DR's systems and whatever it is that they did to be successful and does it for their own game, and then there's potentially a lawsuit about that, right? Where somebody goes, "Hey, that business process that you do, that's ours. You stole that from us," or this piece of information is copyrighted or trademarked, or who knows. I think so. I think though right now we look at lawsuits in the LARP community. Pretty universal. I've never met anybody in the LARP community who thinks of the lawsuit in the LARP community as a good thing. Like they're always like, "Ugh, this stupid thing. Why can't we all just be friends and geeks together?" And and there's still this feeling for a lot of people that LARPers should band together because we were all rejected by the world. Like that, you hear that refrain, and I think that will diminish actually because it will just become it will become as it becomes more mainstream. People coming to LARPing from all different walks of life in different places, which is already the case, but it will become part of the narrative that we're a bunch of different people, and so we can sue each other now because we don't know. We're not all in the basement together.
I'm sorry, I just read Pat's comments about the dramatic reading of the deposition. Oh my gosh.
That's a really good idea. I'd have to obviously talk to Dave because I think it was his idea. But actually, so we're getting a question. So Dave has asked us talking about creative content control and sort of what the potential for that. And so now, just a quick question for you back. So, Dave, I'm going to read his question because rather than describe it. Question: Can you touch briefly on potential creative content control? For instance, Nero copyrights the world of Tira, but who owns the creative content run at chapters and how that moves from local items to canon? So, I have some thoughts on this, and I guess there's two versions of the question. There's one question that asks, what a legal framework for that might be or will be, and then one question is what is happening right now. So I'm going to ramble about legal framework for the future because we're on a weird time delay with the chat. That'll give you time, Dave, to actually tell me which one you wanted us to talk about. But I'm in a legal headspace at the moment. I think that once you hit more money, a lot of this stuff becomes more formal. So, and once right now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about right now as a springboard. Right now, like I open a chapter, I open a LARP or whatever, and then I have a bunch of staff members come on board and they run content, or they create content and they run it. And we're all friends and we're all kind of hanging out. And we've got volunteers, and there's not really a lot of money involved, and nobody's, break even is a good day, and the content ownership is not an issue for anybody. And I think what is going to happen is fast forward a few years, and as money starts to flow into the industry, and you start having LARPs that are legitimately like making money, and I think DR might lead the way on that, and through festival LARPs coming to the College of Wizardry style stuff. As that progresses, the intellectual property, the actual creative content itself, starts to have value. And it kind of has value now, but it doesn't have enough value right now for anybody who really should sue each other over it. But even if they're going to, and I think as that has value, what you're going to have is a wave of people who run LARPs, and they're running it really with a business owner's perspective, even if they're going to run it with volunteer help, and even if they're going to run it with not as a living, right? But they're going to have a certain business process mindset. And in the business community, it's normal and okay for somebody to come on board, sign a document that spells out the relationship between them and the business. Like that's not unusual. There's nothing wrong with that. We think of it as weird in LARPing, right? If I told my staff, for Invictus 2, some of which are listening, hey guys, I want you to sign this, because it's, I don't know. It'd be kind of an interesting conversation. We may have had that conversation for Invictus 1 because I am kind of a weird planning nerd. They might have to remind me. But it's, it's not a common thing right now, but I think it will become a thing that explicitly lays out all content generated for this LARP belongs to, Wacky Games LLC. And Wacky Games LLC puts on, Mighty Dragon Quest LARP, and they own all the creative content. And the people who volunteer to do it recognize that. I think that's going to be a thing. And I think what you're going to also find is non-exclusive licenses can also potentially become a thing. Now, if we go far enough away, far enough into the future where now we're 50 years in the future, and LARPing is the new football or whatever. Like it's really developed. I don't know that it will, but I think it'd be kind of cool. In that case, I think you're going to start to have eventually rockstar. We kind of have it informal. You're going to have rockstar staff members, rockstar creators, right? Right now, Stephen King is a rockstar novelist. He is in control of the relationship between him and the publisher, right? Like, the publisher has more. If Stephen King's like, you know what, screw you, he could go find somebody else. They can't find another Stephen King. And so with content creators, you're probably going to have to have a lot more interesting agreements between content control where you might have non-exclusive licenses. I'm going to go staff your LARP and generate content, and I'm going to license you to use it, and I'm going to get to use it too, and we have non-exclusive licenses to use this content. Maybe you own it. excuse me, maybe you own it and I have a license to use it in my own private world. Because I'm going to go write novels based on the stuff I write for your game. You know, but I think that's where we're going to start eventually getting um, those kinds of agreements. But I think it'll start with everything in this game is owned by me, and then develop to different kinds of license agreements and things like that. But really, you only get that once you have enough money.
So now we had a kind of a quick side question from Steven there about intellectual property on owning characters. I think a lot of that has to do with whatever documentation you sign when you start to play. If you didn't sign anything, then I don't think they're going to be able to stop you from owning that character concept. But additionally, I don't think you're going to be able to stop them from noting that that character existed in their system.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm not a, I'm not a practice. I feel like there's a disclaimer. I'm not a practice.
I'm definitely not a lawyer. I've never been one.
I no longer practice, and intellectual property was not my forte. So I can't give you sort of this is the law on this. But yeah, I think you're right. Right now it's fuzzy, right? Can they stop you? Can you stop them? Is a random disclaimer in a rule book enough? What's going to happen, or what has to happen for that sort of thing to get clarified, is unless somebody just starts putting it in, documentation and says, to play my game, you sign over all rights and blah blah blah. What's really going to happen is eventually there's going to be enough at stake that somebody's going to have a lawsuit. There's going to be a court case, and you're going to have a precedent, and you're going to have some federal law on it. Or maybe there is already related intellectual property law I'm not aware of, and some kind of closely related industry that would provide guidance that I just don't know. But who owns your character? Who owns your character, Stephen, is ultimately probably pretty fuzzy until it's worth arguing about. I make a character for Fifth Gate, and then I write a series of best-selling novels based on that character. I don't think the owners of Fifth Gate would begrudge me that, right? But let's say Joe owned Fifth Gate, and now we have a lawsuit. I don't know. That's gonna create the answer is that kind of litigation. And you're gonna get, I think, eventually you're gonna get a lot of a hilarious niche of law that's all about like, well, if the disclaimer is in the rule book and it contains 2 of the following 5 elements and is coupled with a waiver signature, that has the following keywords in it, then you're going to have some weird law with that, based on court cases. It's going to sound a little weird. I hope we don't ever get a formal statute like the LARP copyright statute passed, because that seems like a huge waste of time. But just because like Congress, you could probably do something better with your time. But I think that's what's going to happen, or that's how it has to happen. Unless, again, there is already a body of well-settled, closely related law that would answer this that I just don't know about. And now Dave asks us who owns the coin given out at events. Coin, it's not really a trolling question. It's a legit question. But it's governed by the same kind of fuzzy, what is the understanding? But the thing about tangible property is that tangible property is often a lot easier to figure out, right? Because it is a physical object that you can argue ownership over in a way that, is just, it's a lot more concrete. So who owns the coin? That one is probably a lot easier for a LARP to say, these are ours, and all they have to do is express that somewhere publicly and clearly. And I would imagine that would be enough. Because all they have to say is, this is a prop, and our expectation is that you turn this in. There comes a point in the law where, if you're holding on to my coin for 17 years and I haven't done anything to get it back, okay, maybe I can't get it back at that point. But if I put in my rule book and on my website and in whatever documentation I give you, that all the props we give out are property of the LARP and need to be returned, then they're ours. And if you take our coin away, you're stealing.
The correct answer is he's trolling.
Yeah, he could also be trolling. As my chat window thing just broke, so I'll be back in there. the stream seems to be going. So yeah, I think that's
Future of
long-winded to go
anything
version of
else you
that.
have on the future of LARPing that you can think of right now?
Um, let's see.
I'm
I
actually interested to hear more about this Nero World thing. I tried to look something up online, and it wasn't great.
so
Apparently, according to the
the next
internet,
Great Hero lawsuit is brewing as a local chapter has. So I have to be a little careful about this because I kind of know almost everybody involved in one way or another, and I don't want to like hurt anybody or and also if there's a legal matter, I don't want to misstate anything. Um, the A local Nero chapter is no longer affiliated with Nero International and may becoming affiliated with something called Nero World. And I think that we're going to see a legal battle between something called Nero World and something called Nero International, which, of course, Nero International's existence is shaky, as depositions have shown. But I think we're going to have an interesting legal fight there um, because that local Nero chapter has sort of switched an affiliation running under a different parent company is maybe not the right word because they don't own them, but if Nero International is sort of the overseer, let's say, then the local chapter is switching to a different overseer, but running the same content. And so I think we're gonna have some interesting lawsuits there. Um, yeah, but it's a lot of it. I think is a little bit of a. I'm not going to say I don't. There's a little bit of a vanity and creative. So I take pride in what I create, right? So I have sort of an artist's vanity about it, and so it's deeply wounding to me if you take my things and mess with them, right? It really bothers like um, but there isn't enough money in what I create as a LARPer, for example, to sue somebody over it. But I might like make a lot of shitty blog posts at them or something. I don't know. And so I don't know that there's a lot of money at stake in the local LARPing community for what's about to happen, justify the thousands of dollars that may be about to be spent. Um, ooh,
so
so that,
yeah, we have a question about. Do you see the hobby expanding in Ohio? Right now, it's really hard to say. I think the mass exodus from Nero and the disintegration of North Coast Nero entirely did not necessarily help the hobby a whole lot. There have been a couple of new games that have come up in that time, and they get all right attendance, but I don't think it's grown in the past 4 or 5 years. I think the high point for it in Ohio was probably when we had 3 different Nero chapters that were running on the regular, and maybe another one that wasn't running as regular. But it's not down a lot. I think it's just kind of been stable.
so since he became Castle Art, is Castle Art still running? No.
I think so, but I've seen a lot less about it, so I don't know in what rate it is. I'm looking at their website now.
Okay, fair enough. And then we got a question that was, do new games, not chapters, but whole new games, help LARP before oversaturate? I guess technically it would depend on what region. You know, um, generally speaking, I can't imagine we're not even close to any level of oversaturation as far as I'm concerned. And new games also have a little bit of a capitalist approach to this, where it's you know new LARPs are good because if they're good, they deserve it, and if they're not, they won't succeed, and the market will kind of resolve that issue. Um, but I want people to try new things, and I want people to um, you know jostle around and figure things out. And we have a population of what 350-ish million. We can absorb way more LARPs than we're currently running. And sometimes it's like, okay, you're going to run your new LARP, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, I'm sorry. But I don't believe, for example, that like if let's say I'm running a LARP, and then you run a LARP, and then you decide to run a LARP. Okay, there's aside from the dick move where you specifically decide to run opposite me as much as possible and then like steal my trailer and whatever, and your goal is specifically to put me out of business. That's one thing. That's kind of a mean spirited. Aside from that, if you just are running in the area and I'm running in the area and you get more players than I do, and eventually my players go to you. You know what? You kind of deserved it, and I kind of did. And that means I need to either step up my game or get out. And that's for the hobby, not for me, but for the hobby. That's a plus because that's kind of how we get some of this progress. You know, there's LARPing. Nero did not need to improve for a very long time because for a very long time it had no competition. And now it's like, well, now it's feeling that. Now it's seeing that, oh, there's a lot of new games. We can't count on being a monopoly. We have to, get better or get out. And I think for the hobby as a whole, not necessarily for individual stakeholders, but the hobby as a whole, that's helpful. You know, I don't know that you can oversaturate. You can just have games that don't succeed. So does that make sense to you, Bill?
Yeah, as long as everybody remains like I'm going to keep attending the best LARP that there is, then yeah, it wouldn't oversaturate. As long as it doesn't cause a lot of people because someone's going to break off and start that new game who played at another game, and then they're going to be unsuccessful, and they may or may not leave the hobby. And I feel like that can cause kind of a saturation at that point in time, where as you're bringing new people in, you're also existing people are leaving, and they might not necessarily be bad for the hobby. They might just be their game that they've decided to run might not be as valuable as if they had spent their time on one of the existing games, I guess.
Maybe, but sort of like on a short timeline, you might have a dip, where things happen. But I think overall, it's on a longer timeline. I think it's helpful. I think it's, and you create, I think the biggest thing that prevents it from being bad.
Hold up a second, Mick.
Oh.
We gotta quick. The stream dropped real fast. It should be back up now.
Hopefully the stream is back. I don't know if any of our listeners missed any of that. So I'm just gonna say, start back at co-competitor. So there's this term co-competitor in business where you are in competition, but also potentially cooperation with similar businesses. And that mindset, I think, lets new LARPs thrive and not oversaturate. If your region is nothing but spite LARPs, then I think it's probably detrimental to the hobby in that region. If you have 10 LARPs, and the only reason that you have 10 LARPs is that 9 of them hate, we're just spite driven, then you probably have a lot of acrimony and a lot of infighting and drama and politics and people hating each other. And that's probably not great for the hobby. But if it's 10 people who are like, I have this creative vision, I mean, it's good. So that's an interesting question.
I think it's population density. I think that's going to have a big part of it, and I think it also the community has been there's a lot of commingling in the community.
Questions for that.
The question is why is the New England area have 55 games and other regions have far less? I think a big part of it is the population concentration. I think that there's a lot more interaction between the LARPs probably in New England. The truth of the matter is during the high time in Ohio, there was a fair amount of communication between the three major Nero groups and not a lot of communication amongst other LARPs, even though they were there. And I think, even with that, some people were a little more competitive than they probably needed to be. I think from all of the Nero games. So your what was it, co-competitor? That I think that applied pretty well to what was going on there, which probably stunted a lot of new games. Also, for a long time, I hate to say this, but pretty much every game in Ohio is kind of, well, I don't know if Dystopia Rising has a game, but a lot of the games are kind of, I don't want to say they're exact clones of each other, but they're all fantasy games. You look at some of the games that are going on in New England, and there's a huge variety of stuff. Between Invictus, which was like a fantasy Romanesque, to the standard fantasy type games in Nero, to you've got like steampunk games, you've got post-apocalyptic games. We don't have a lot of that in Ohio.
Yeah. I think another factor. So this is actually we should ask Sarah's already qualified to chart some of this out. But I don't really know. But I think one of the factors that maybe density of colleges. It's not necessarily true today that Harvard are colleges, right? But that is definitely a factor, right? A lot of LARPers are college kids, or a lot of these games were started by people from New England because New England had a large population of LARPers, because New England at that time, where college kids were our main source, it just has a huge density. And I think that's probably at least one factor. Boston is, you throw a rock and you hit 5 schools. And so I think that feels like but I don't know Pittsburgh at all. I don't know. I don't know if Pittsburgh. I know it's got some schools around it, but I don't know. But yeah, it is a little weird. Is there a political bias to LARPing? Right. I mean, I have LARPed with people across every piece of the political spectrum, so it's not like there's no right wing or left wing LARPers or whatever. But I'm wondering if, on average, are LARPs more found in, New England is sort of it's a pretty left-leaning kind of place. Does that affect things? I don't know, but that's the kind of I wonder, is there a correlation? I guess it depends. Where California is a big place for LARPing. It's also kind of it's a lefty kind of place. Are there super conservative places with high LARP populations? My gut says no.
Salt Lake City, all LARPs all the time.
But I don't actually know.
Now something else that could have an impact on it is the Ohio region's a little bit more unusual in the number of events that we have, because you look at a lot of the games in New England, and the common is that there's 4 games a year. But in Ohio, it wasn't unusual for in the heyday, War was running 16 to 20 events a year. NCN was running 8 to 12 events a year. Castle was running 8 to 12 events a year. We had a lot of events, but because of the density of Nero events, because of that fantasy trope, there wasn't a whole lot of time for other people to play other LARPs. And so even now, Castle ran 7 games this year. War, I think, ran 14 games, I think. Don't quote me on that number, but I mean, we play there's very few 4-game-a-year LARPs, so.
Yeah, that was a paradigm shift to Patrick's term. I remember when Magical first started, for a lot of people in Europe, and maybe it was done elsewhere, but for the slice of life that was the Euro, running 4 events a year was it was just bizarre. It was like, no, we're going to 4 really good events instead of 8 or 10 or 12 or 14, not as good or whatever. I'm not saying I haven't been over for no, I assume you do. So, but that's got to run you ragged. You guys have.
Yeah, let me explain. So the way that we run the game here is we actually have 3 towns, and the 3 towns have kind of a campaign plot that is overarching the whole campaign. But really, those 3 towns are 3 separate stories, and each of those, I think, is 3 to 4 events a year, and each of those has a completely separate plot team. So there are some PCs that play at both towns. Some people play different characters at both towns, or all 3 towns. And then we also have a couple of campaign events, which are kind of like major things that are going on in the world that people from different towns might go, join up and go to. And all of those are run by different things. So a plot team's probably not going to run more than 3 to 4 events a year. So it's not like we have one person who's running 14 events, although my wife is heavily involved in campaign plot and probably runs plot at every one of the events that she goes to. So if anyone is close to that, it's her.
Yeah,
Your audio is getting like it seems like it keeps getting worse, Mickey.
My audio?
At least to me.
That's why it's gets worse for me. So maybe it's going. Yeah. Is this any better?
Maybe a little bit. Keep talking.
I mean, I guess. Just this once, I will keep rambling just for you.
It sounds like you're very far away from the mic. I don't know if there's something covering it up or.
Well, I'm gonna physically get closer and see what happens. How's that? Now it's weird color. Yeah. Clearly, I'm a huge techno geek here. How's that?
That last thing that you said sounded a little bit better,
All right.
but now it's back to being quiet. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer for you. Mickey normally records on his computer where he doesn't have the video. So I thought you were gonna plug it in.
No, it doesn't work with the. So, all right, now we're gonna go really. Yeah.
You're on. You're good.
Nobody ever needed to know. I'm using my tablet because it's what has the camera on it. Whereas normally I'm just. Thanks, Dave. Whereas normally I'm just using my computer and Skype, and it's all audio. So, am I still sounding really terrible?
You sound a lot better right now.
All right. Well, let's hope it holds out. So, you know, it's funny. So in the chat, they're making fun of us, which is fair. But actually, at the $50, somebody asked us about levels, and we're joking about reward levels and things like that. Once we get to one of our goals is at 50 an episode, we'll add some production values. At 100, Bill and I meet, and I'm sure it's somewhere in there, even if it's not a reward level, we'll be able to afford to upgrade our tech. Because I agree, we should have, that would be good use of our money.
I'll be honest. I did upgrade my tech today. I got a new Yeti mic. My wife got it for my birthday, which is next week. But she figured it would be good for me to have for the live stream. So,
is that what you're using right now?
Yeah, that's what I'm using right now. Although I didn't have a lot of time to set it up and make sure it was all right. So, I think I might be picking up a lot of background noise. But whatever, we'll do it live.
Okay, well, this has been another episode of Tech Talk on audio equipment. So legit, and we will try to get working on that in the next couple of weeks, or hopefully, I'm not gonna make any crazy promises for December, but hopefully by January, somewhere in there. Yep, and they're making fun of me. That's legit. I earned that. All right, so let's see. Getting back to something semblance of a show. I'm trying to think what else. What does the future hold, right? Rules wise, I want to talk about the rules thing a little bit. We are not. I don't think we will ever hit the ultimate rule set. I don't think that will ever actually be a thing. I think that there will always be iteration, there will always be change. And I think that you'll end up essentially there'll be trends, and things will trend this way and trend that way. So cell phones. If you remember, when cell phones first came out, the biggest thing in the world about cell phones was, could you make them smaller? Right? You wanted as small a phone as possible. Zoolander, the movie notable, makes fun of that because he has a phone that's this big. All right, and then phones became smartphones, and now it's like, how big of a phone can you get, right? Where Galaxy Note, when it's not exploding, is a huge device, But that's a trend. But then there's people out there who are like, no, I prefer a smaller phone, and they're always iterating and things like that. And obviously, there's other industry factors for there. But I'm just saying, there's a trend. There's trends in fashion. All right, we've been wearing shirts for hundreds of years. We people are always messing around with shirt design. I don't think we're ever going to have an ultimate rule set. But I'm excited. I am excited to see where some of the things that people develop are. I'm excited to see how technology will impact rules. And it's just like, I'm a huge accelerant fan.
right? And so Accelerant's not done growing. Rob is always tweaking it here or there. Its core remains relatively the same. Uh, but that and it's getting more and more adoption. So I think in the future you're going to see a lot more games running Accelerant, and that I think it has the potential to grow into sort of an industry default. But it's going to be people are still going to iterate off of it, and you're going to get forked versions of it to use like Android terms. You're going to get forked, Accelerant systems, where somebody basically runs an Accelerant game, but messes with it in some personal pet peeve way that Rob doesn't feel like suing them over. Like you're going to have that, but then you're going to have somebody who develops a new rule set that doesn't accommodate everybody, but does one job really well, right? Like my rule set is designed to make the grittiest version of a fantasy LARP possible. So that's all it does. It's not the best at immersion. It's not the best at accommodating a sci-fi setting. It's not the best at adaptability and flexibility. But what it's really good at is making you feel like if you get a splinter, you might die of gangrene. So I think that we'll just perpetually be in rules. I guess ultimately we'll perpetually be in rules debates for the rest of our lives.
Well, I've got two things to say to that. First off, Accelerant rules will never be perfect until Rob figures out what to do with the grants, because they're a nightmare.
Yes.
And also, we will have a perfect set of rules that will come in the future. It's called the holodeck.
So. No, it won't. We'll still be arguing about the holodeck rules.
Well, I mean that will be how we keep our podcast, but.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of talk about shirts in the chat right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of shirt talk going on. But like for example, to take Accelerant, which again I love, and I love Accelerant from sort of a playing perspective, but also a lot of the meta that goes into it is really really cool. But yeah, it has some issues. The grant rules, the grant rules get clarified constantly, and nobody knows how they work, and it drives everybody crazy. And so there's actually sort of essentially a meta to the grant rules at this point. At this point, if you play in an Accelerant game and somebody gives you a grant, you just go with it, and everybody is kind of fuzzy about it, and you kind of glean their intent because they're going to screw up the words. So they're going to tell you that they're going to try to indicate to you that this grant stacks with other grants, and then you kind of go with it. And they're going to use the wrong word, but you kind of figure it out. So people are communicating grant intent, but they're often screwing up the there's a syntax for grants that everybody screws up, and there's a vocabulary for grants that everybody screws up. And, so that's clearly an issue that that's being iterated on. I don't like how Stricken has there's some rules have exceptions, and effects have exceptions to sort of the normal flow, and Stricken is one of them, and that kind of drives me a little crazy. So there's always going to be these iterations. And Accelerant, 50 years from now, Accelerant 10.6, will. The nice thing about Accelerant is that it will be recognizably Accelerant even then, but it will have iterated extensively. But I think that what you're going to find is that I think it has the potential to be a very core baseline rule set for a lot of people, but people will never stop inventing their own. They'll never, and there's rules designers to me fall into the category of somebody who wants to make more work for themselves and decides to reinvent the wheel, or somebody who needs a rule set to do a very specific job. And you're going to always have both. I'm always more interested in these people because this to me has a rational basis to it, whereas if you just want to reinvent the wheel, you're just wasting time.
And I will take a moment to say, the Accelerant is very good at what it does, but it is not. I don't want to say it's not the best rule set that I've used, but there's definitely a lot of problems with Accelerant, and one of them is that it's really easy to murder everybody if you don't know what you're doing. I think it takes a lot of skill to set up encounters in Accelerant correctly.
Yeah, it's not an idiot. It's not an idiot-proof system.
And there is still a lot of effects. I think that if we talked about the fast type LARP, it's going to have a cut down version of the rules from Accelerate because there's just too many effects.
Well, what's interesting about that is you could
The nice thing about something,
Well, I know you say that you can not use all of the effects. You could choose to not use 90% of the effects in the game. But if they're in the rule book, people are going to look at the 40-page rule book and say, I don't know.
yeah, look, it's not the best at every job, right? But it really depends on what is your job that you want to accomplish. So if you want to run a LARP that is incredibly based on super, what's the best word? Like a really high narrative, crazy fantasy, out there kind of a game,
Kind of
right? Where
storytelling, a storytelling LARP.
storytelling, yeah, like where it's a LARP, but it is principally sort of a shared storytelling experience. Then Accelerant is maybe not the best way to do
Yeah.
it. If you're comfortable with I'm going to narrate things, then it's not the way to go, right? But it is really good at removing out of game issues and out of game narration. And I think, and if your goal is to create a LARP that is sort of that pulls you into the visceral experience without a lot of out of game distraction, I think it works pretty well for that. Though, you take something like Avagos, which I don't know if they're still running or not, but Avagos was, they looked at Accelerant as incredibly immersion breaking because it had all these verbals, right? So we'll see. We'll see where it
And
goes.
then they post
I guess
pictures of
my
people
fundamental,
drinking Coke. I'm sorry.
I think Accelerant's gonna
I got nothing.
what?
And then they post pictures of people drinking out of Coke cans. Yeah.
Well, there's that.
Good job.
I think Accelerant has the ability to become, as just, to explode in popularity. But we're always going to be arguing rules forever and ever and ever. So I'm just catching up on the chat. Uh, they're comparing different rule sets to operating systems. Although I like Nero's Netscape, that's pretty good. So anyway, so yeah, there's gonna be. I'm trying to think what else is. Oh,
So I got one more thing about the future of LARP. Obviously, we can't talk about the future without talking about the next 4 years. That's going to be it's going to be a time. That's
wait,
it's going to be a time. So I think LARP is going to be important in the next 4 years at least, as a means of some escapism, hopefully healthy escapism from things that are going on. And also, I really hope that this is an opportunity that someone takes advantage of to kind of show how the other side lives, because LARP kind of has the benefit of literally putting you in somebody else's shoes. And this is something else that's new that's coming out with all the VR stuff that's going on, that you have kind of newfound ability to kind of see how the other side lives. And I would like to see someone run some LARPs for because it's going to be a very, very tough time in the next 4 years for a number of groups, which I'm not a part of, and I'm lucky. I'm playing the real world on easy mode, but I think we probably need LARP to help understand the trials and troubles that people are going to be going through in the next 4 years.
yeah, obviously I agree. I touched on it. I think what last episode was it, or the episode before, something like that. So I'm with you. I think that there's a great ability. And I think that it's a valuable thing. Hopefully, people will find a refuge if they feel like they need it, and then we'll all kind of run each other a little bit. Yeah, to talk about. I just want to respond to the chat that Westworld is effectively about LARPing. So I haven't seen it yet. I plan to. It's on my the whole season's recorded. But I remember Westworld is featured in pretty much like every article that talks about the history of LARPing tends to mention Westworld somewhere, because it was a book, right? If I recall correctly. And it's because it's like this old book that they were like, yeah, this book is clearly describing LARPing, and then LARPing happened. And so it's funny that it's now kind of come full circle, where it's this HBO show, and people are like, oh my god, that thing's about LARPing. Yeah, that is one of the Genesis texts for what we're doing now. All right. Let's see. Anything else before we've been doing this for it's been a pretty good episode.
I'm not far enough into Westworld to know whether or not that's a good or bad representation of us, but I have a feeling it might be the latter.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm looking forward to it.
No spoilers.
No. Cool, guys. All right. So, we're gonna wrap up in a minute. But I wanted to take a moment. If there are any other last questions or anything else anybody wants to touch on before we call it a night. No. And now I have to pause and wait, or just ramble about my waiting.
Let me take a moment. So to our patrons out there, you're probably wondering, some of you guys, we started in May. We said 6 months we're gonna have shirts. You're probably saying, what's going on? It's been more than 6 months. Where's my shirt? We had to retouch up the graphic because, as you can see on the graphic over there, that's... See, I'm glad I got that because I got the webcam. I wasn't sure I was going to point in the right direction. It's too many colors for a t-shirt. So we had to get that reworked to something that we can do for a t-shirt. And we also had to add the bit about being a patron because it is going to be a unique t-shirt. But we've got the graphic design now, so we're going to put the order in for the shirts. So we have a list of people who have sent in their addresses and their sizes. If you haven't sent that in yet, make sure you send that in to us at mickeyandbill@gmail.com. And that way we'll make sure to get that. We're going to try and order them in bulk. So if we don't get your size this time, we're gonna get some extras in the sizes we think we're going to get. Hopefully we guess correctly because it's a lot less expensive if we get 20 shirts up front.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, the new logo, the logo for the shirts is really, really cool looking. So I'm really excited about it. So you should see those pretty soon. Yeah, and thank you, Bill, for handling a lot of those logistical issues.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. I think that's about it. Was there anything else that we needed to? We're skipping our normal housekeeping stuff. This is thank you again for patrons for making this show possible. So, this is all about you guys.
I'm sorry. Dave's posting stuff in the chat. Oh.
My chat, what do you, the chat froze. The last thing I see from the chat is Steven saying accurate.
Oh, no, Dave posted, I do not have any children of my bloodline that women have let me know that I'm responsible for.
Oh, yes. A classic deposition quote. There it is. I think our stream, you and I are seeing the chat at different times. So, anyway, as I was saying, this episode is made possible by our patrons. Thank you guys so very much. It's an honor and a privilege and fun, and that people would, want to, feel like what Bill and I do is valuable. So thank you. But I think that's about it, right?
I do have a next level LARP. I do have a next level LARP.
Oh yeah, all right, next level up. You didn't put it in the document.
I didn't put it in the document. No, I'm shooting off the hip for this one. So it's basically Spore the LARP. Everybody starts out as a caveman with 2 hit points, and you swing uncalled damage or something like that in the accelerant system. And as you kill bad guys and you search them, you get evolution points, and you can trade them in the event to get new abilities that'll lock you out from other abilities. I'll say maybe the first 2 or 3 evolutions aren't worth anything, but after that, if people kill you, they get evolution points for killing you, so then people just start killing each other. Survival of the fittest style. I think it'd be good.
Oh, good.
This is why we have no LARPs in Ohio. I mean, this is why we have only the 4 or 5 LARPs with a whole bunch of people in Ohio, and 14 events each, something like that.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
All right, so with that, this has been our live episode of Larpcast, all about the future of LARPing with an AMA with you guys.
All right. Yeah, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.